So welcome to Research Conference. I'm Danny Benjamin. I'm the Faculty Associate Director here. And in the unlikely event that I get paged out during Research Conference, Karen Pieper has graciously agreed to handle questions and answers. I promised you that was unlikely. It's really my privilege to introduce Renato Lopes, who has a joint appointment here and at the Federal University of Sao Paulo in Brazil as an associate professor. He did his research training here as a DCRI fellow back when I was the fellowship director. And Renato was the first, actually Renato had an extremely successful fellowship program here. Renato, in fact, was the first chief fellow that we had who was born outside the United States and trained somewhere other than Brazil. A decision that was considered a little risky, but we knew that he would excel at it, and he did, as he has done in everything that I know of in his professional life. In addition to the usual multiple New England Journal of Medicine papers as a first author, as a faculty member and fellow, and he's the associate director of the clinical events classification group and the fellowship program here now. One of the things I think is most impressive about Renato is that he started the Brazilian Clinical Research Institute. And for the junior investigators here who have never tried to who have not yet gotten a multi-year, multi-million-dollar program off the ground and start that from scratch, let me tell you from experience, that's an incredible accomplishment. It's really impressive to see one of our graduates do this so quickly after completing his fellowship training. To do just even one major trial as a lead investigator is considered an academic accomplishment, but to do it repeatedly and to develop a program is extremely impressive. And so I look forward to what you have to say today, Renato. It's been my privilege to know you as both a fellow and a faculty member here, and I'm glad to hear from you today.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Danny, for the kind words, and has been a really great journey these last 6 years here at the DCRI. And the idea today was really to update you all about the activities of the Brazilian Clinical Research Institute that we founded now 3 years ago. So how we're doing and some of the projects that we have done. And then I took also the opportunity to update you in something that we're launching this year in Brazil, which is the Global Health, Brazilian Global Health Center. So again, using the same infrastructure, the same model or similar model that we did with the Brazilian Clinical Research Institute, we now took advantage to try to also extend the Duke Global Health Institute to Brazil through a very cool setup that I hope you all enjoy. So the talk will have two parts. The first is going to be an update in the Brazilian Clinical Research Institute activities, and the second part I will focus more on the plans for the Global Health Institute down there in Brazil. So my disclosures are available, but my real disclosure for this talk is that I'm originally from Brazil. So that's the really one important for this particular talk. So in this article, which I thought was very interesting, published 2 years ago, the authors did a literature research and search about the publications from places all over the world in terms of CV and non-CV. And what they conclude is that of all the papers within CV, only 4% was coming. Only 4% are coming from South America, 23% coming from the United States and Canada, and 40% coming from Europe. And then again, they conclude that Latin America, while publishing more articles than previously, there was an important increase in the last 10 years, was still lagging behind the developed countries. So again, something that shows, and I'm going to illustrate here a little bit of the opportunities that we have in Brazil for growth. And here's the scenario. Clinical research is a rapidly growing segment of the emerging markets, as everybody knows. And we know Brazil and Latin America are playing an important role in trials overall and registries. But again, Brazil is responsible for only 1.2% of the global market share. And there is a positive trend, but again, we believe that this is way behind or way below the expectations that Brazil can actually perform. When we do like a search in terms of a year or so ago, that's a little bit old, but we have registered in the clinicaltrial.gov over 100,000 protocols, over 100,000 studies. And when we look at the places where these studies coming from, we can see that more than half are coming from the United States. And when we look at Brazil or South America, we can see that only about 3,500 coming from those countries. So again, large area of the world and huge potential to grow and to start actually generating knowledge as opposed to just execute studies developed by other countries. But more importantly, when we talk about South America, it's a very large region of the world, but when we look at the articles, basically 70% of all the studies and articles coming from South America are coming primarily from two countries. First, Brazil, and second, Argentina. So basically, if we, and Danny and Suresh and I were talking about this as a DCRI strategy for Latin America, if we focus really in these two main countries, we'll be covering probably 70% of South America. Of course, there are other important studies coming from other places, but in terms of strategy, we need to focus really in terms of these two countries. And we know that clinical innovation is key for many areas of the economy, and clinical research is a key mechanism for implementation of new technology systems. So also something that the countries in South America can take advantage of. So that's the situation in Brazil. So in the last 10 years, over 100,000 patients enrolled in trials. Around 550 clinical sites are qualified for testing new drugs and devices. This involvement, we believe, it's way below the expectation for the potential of Brazil. As you guys can see, over the $20 billion invested in clinical research per year, Brazil gets only 70 million. So again, for an emerging country, we think we can do much better. And that's why Brazil is considered now one of the countries of the opportunity in many areas, including clinical research. But to do that, we really need to change culture, we really need to change mentality, we really need to change how people see and face research down there in a way that we do here in the United States and in some countries in Europe. So that's why we decided to create the BCRI. So I gave a talk a year or so ago about that, and I give this talk in the symposium that BMO just organized a few months ago about how to build an ARO. And I think it's important because there is no easy ride. There is no free ride, and things are, if you really want to make the change and make the difference, we need to be very clear on what we need to do. Hello? Hello? Is it working? Bimo, can you step out, please? So we need to have very clear what the barriers and challenges are so that we can face them and try to overcome those. So we had to be very clear when we were building the BCRI that it's not easy. It takes really time, investment, commitment in multiple levels. It varies country by country, so there is no really magic formula that we can just apply the Duke model in Brazil the same way we do in China, the same way we do in India, because it's not going to work. It is very complex. It involves local clinical research culture, politics, and academic relationships. And again, as we said, it's really hard work, and there is no magic formula. But nonetheless, we took the chance and we went over, and DCRI really have been very supportive of all these initiatives, and that's why we're going to now update you guys a little bit. So we founded the Institute in December 2008. There's the formal affiliation with the Federal University of São Paulo in Brazil. It's one of the best medical schools down there. The objective of the Institute was enhancing clinical research expertise, respecting national and international ethical principles and regulations. Our board is comprised by faculty from the Federal University of São Paulo. It's an academically based partnership for sharing information, resources, and responsibility. Excellent understanding of regulatory requirements in Brazil and Latin America. And again, really try to change the culture and teach people there how to share knowledge and how to collaborate with other research groups, being other contract research organizations or even the sponsors. That's the building for those who never been there. A lot of people here have been there in many different times, and we have now a 4-floor building in the main campus of the university. And our mission, just to keep in mind, is to develop and share knowledge that improves the care, health, and quality of life of patients in Brazil and Latin America through innovative clinical research while contributing meaningfully to the improvement of patient care around the world. It's very similar to the DCRI mission, as you note, and that was done on purpose because when we built that, was to be really mirroring the DCRI model and to be the extension of DCRI in South America. That was the idea. So that's the partnership with the Federal University of São Paulo, Paulista School of Medicine. We have an international advisory board. You recognize several of the names in this slide. About half of those are from Duke, as expected. And these people have been really key in terms of giving us advice and helping us develop the Institute in a much faster fashion that would be possible without them. So I would like to thank all these people and others that are not listed here, especially operational people from the DCRI and other institutes that have been helping us tremendously in trying to accomplish many milestones. So here, I'm not going to give so many details, but these are some of the activities that BCRI is already performing. Some of them we are in a more developed stage. Some of them we are in a less developed stage, still using a lot of collaboration from other places, particularly here from Duke. And now we have we have several sites. We have about 150 sites working closely with us in the country. These sites are not homogeneous in terms of quality and research experience, and that's one of our role is to really get these sites up and running in a higher quality fashion. And we have about 35% of the sites, or 35 sites, sorry, that are considered very high quality sites. So we are doing constant work to bring these sites up and running in a high quality fashion. And these are some of the affiliations hospitals that work with us, which I'm not going to go into the details, but just to illustrate that we have, with all them together, about 15,000 beds. So a large network that, again, if we can use them correctly, if we can work with them, if we can share with them knowledge and change the mentality of the country, is a huge potential to enroll patients, to recruit patients that we know we are struggling here in the United States. These are some of the studies that are already finalized by the Institute. So these are not studies that were necessarily ran by BCRI, but BCRI was involved somehow in the national coordination or Brazil or South America. And in red, you guys can appreciate these are DCRI studies. So almost half or a little bit over half of our studies actually that we finalized so far were DCRI studies, or in other words, trials studies that DCRI were the coordinating center. And these are the ongoing studies. You can also appreciate several of the trials in red are ongoing trials from Duke, from the DCRI, that BCRI is involved somehow, or through CEC, or through national coordination, or through safety, or through some kind of national or global leadership role. The other thing that I'm very proud, and that was a particular dream that I had, was to bring really the formal training in clinical research to Brazil. And in Brazil we have people doing clinical research. We don't have a formal training in terms of a master's program in clinical research, focusing in clinical research. And in 2011, together with Gino Doni, at that time he was the director, the program director of the CRTP, the Clinical Research Training Program. And we discussed about bringing the CRTP to Brazil live, just like the NIH. The NIH have 5 or 6 students that take the course through the TV, through live, and then they graduate with a Duke degree without having to come to Durham. So we work hard, and we selected 4 students. We started with 4 cardiologists because we're easier to manage somebody in our field. And they started the master's program in 2011, and in May of this year, they're going to be graduating from the CRTP with a Duke degree without having to leave São Paulo, Brazil. So I think that was really cool to give the opportunity to people to have exposure to a high-quality course, a high-quality program, actually a US degree, without having to live their lives and leave their country and leave their city. And we are already recruiting 5 or 6 additional students for the next year. And we also have a lot of educational programs and educational meetings going on. This is I just selected that because I think this is probably one of the most exciting ones is the ISTA meeting. It's a meeting that we've created like 6 years ago now. We do every year. Richard Becker and myself are the co-chair of the meeting. And every year we bring about 12 international faculty from all over the world, particularly half of them from Duke. And usually it's a really fun meeting because we have all thought leaders from Brazil attending the meeting. We have people from Japan attending the meeting, from other parts of the world. And we discuss the really cutting edge knowledge and research in the field of thrombosis and anticoagulation, as well as interactions between the Brazilian physicians and the American physicians, and the exchange is really valuable, and people have been really enjoying this partnership and this meeting. And then a year or so ago, there was an important partnership that we did down there in Brazil with a major cardiology institute, called the Agecore Institute, led by the research institute is led by my good friend Otávio Berwanger, and Otávio has been a great partner, he's a personal friend, and together these 2 institutes are really trying to change the paradigm in Brazil, change the paradigm of research in Brazil, and we really need to break down the barriers and start collaborating with people so people can know that more people together, working together, can achieve more, as I'm going to say in the end, more uncommon results that one would be able to do it alone. So this is one of the things, or one of the trials that we just did last year in collaboration with the Agecore. So Agecore, together with BCRI, we ran the Bridge ACS study. As you can see, there was a steering committee made mainly from people from both institutions, but we have here Eric Pearson and Karen Pieper. They were part of our steering committee that helped run the trial. And this trial was a very interesting study because it was funded by the Ministry of Health. So the Ministry of Health now changing a little bit also the culture and sponsoring clinical studies and not just basic science studies, as was traditionally in Brazil. And they funded this multi-center study where we tested a multifaceted quality improvement intervention versus routine practice in patients with ACS. So basically physicians were trained and physicians were receiving this package versus regular care. And this was a randomized cluster design trial. So we couldn't randomize patients for obvious reasons, but we needed to randomize clusters. So we randomized about 35 hospitals to receive half of them the new intervention and the other half the usual care. And we look at the primary endpoint, what was the impact of doing that training, that active educational tool. In other words, it's not just giving pamphlets or guidelines, because that's passive education. That has an impact, but not too much. So active education tools, having a case manager, taking care of the patient through the whole hospitalization, using bracelets, classifying patients in high, moderate, and low risk, and see how much this could impact the use of evidence-based medicine within the 24 hours and also at the time of discharge. And basically what we showed is that in patients with ACS, a simple multifaceted education intervention resulted in significant improvement in the use of evidence-based medications, both within the first 24 hours, and more important, the fact that they were using more, this was carried out through the whole hospitalization through the time of discharge. More importantly, this also translated in better clinical outcomes in 30 days. Of course, we did not achieve statistical superiority because we didn't have power for that. The study was not powered to achieve and to look at clinical hard endpoints, but the trend, there was a trend in 20% relative risk reduction in death, MI, and stroke at 30 days. So again, because it was simple and feasible, the tools tested in the Bridge ACS trial can become the basis for developing quality improvement programs to maximize the use of evidence-based intervention for management of patients with ACS. So again, a trial that was done by the government, by the two institutions in Brazil with government money, and we're very happy because this was presented last year in a major session, in a late-breaking clinical trial session at the ACC, and with a simultaneous publication in JAMA. It was the first time that actually a multi-center, government-sponsored study was published in a major medical journal. The interesting thing that I want to call the attention to you guys is that the first patient of Bridge was enrolled in March 2011. That was the first patient enrolled. In March 2012, the trial was presented as a late-breaking clinical trial and published in JAMA with 1,100 patients enrolled, 35 sites. So again, I think that illustrates the potential of Brazil to overcome some of the barriers that we are facing here in the United States in terms of recruitment, enrollment, and cost for clinical studies. And again, this was a nice collaboration between the Agecore Institute through Otávio and his team, the BCRI with our team down there, and Duke Clinical Research Institute. Karen and her group validated all the results and of the statistical analysis, and as well as the Ministry of Health, who now were changing the paradigm with a more visionary approach and investing in clinical studies that can actually make the difference. After that study, we were fortunate, and also Otávio, with a very good relationship with the Ministry of Health, we were able to get 2 additional grants to perform 2 large additional randomized trials. The first one is the Secure PCI, which is a trial looking at the question of high-dose statins early on in patients presenting with ACS for 24 hours prior, 1 dose prior and 1 dose after the PCI, and then what is the impact of these high-dose statins in clinical outcomes. So this study is about it's planned to be enrolling 4,000 patients in 65 sites, also sponsored by the government and run by Agecore together with BCRI. We have already 200 patients enrolled, and Chris Granger, John Alexander, and Christine Nubi and Lane Thomas are actually participating on the steering committee of this study. And the other one is called the LOAD study. It's also ongoing now. It's just started recruiting the few patients, the few initial patients, and this study is looking at high-dose statins also prior non-cardiac surgery and after cardiac surgery for 7 days, and look at the outcomes up to 36 months and 1 year. So again, high-dose statins, what is the impact of high-dose statins in patients undergoing non-cardiac surgery? And in this study, Eric Peterson, Ken Mahaffey, and others are also involved through the steering committee. We are planning to enroll 7,000 patients, over 100 sites, also sponsored by the Ministry of Health. So again, we believe that we are moving forward and making some changes that can actually help move research in Brazil. In terms of registry, again, another partnership with the BCRI, Agecore, and now the Brazilian Society of Cardiology, who understand now the importance of performing registries in the country. We didn't have much data down there. So that's the Recall registry, is our atrial fibrillation registries that we are running in collaboration. And that's the latest one is the data on patients with hypertension, heart failure, AFib, ACS, chronic coronary disease, and then start planning studies with data that comes actually from our country. So in conclusion, Latin American countries are in the development process of starting to generate knowledge from clinical research and not only just import the knowledge or import the protocol from other countries, which is very important. There's a huge potential for growth. And again, this could be a paradigm shift in clinical research, making it easier, faster, and cheaper, but more importantly, keeping the high quality standards. And that's why it's very important, this collaboration and support from places like Duke Clinical Research Institute that can actually make us learn things much faster and not make the mistakes that maybe we have done here 20 years ago and then jump those steps and get in a better place faster. And again, it's very important to change the culture down there. And to change this culture, we really need to show that clinical research is a specialty. You cannot just do clinical research from 5 to 7 o'clock when you don't have anything else to do. Because so far, that's how clinical research was faced in Brazil. People do their job, work, see patients at 6 p.m., they go to home, and then they say, okay, I have an hour, maybe I'll do a little bit of research or try to write an article. So that doesn't work. So you have to be a priority. You have to have practical and theoretical experience. It takes time and dedication, just like any specialty. Nobody starts operating a brain after medical school. It takes 6-7 years for somebody to feel comfortable to go there and do a neurosurgery. So same thing. Mentorship is key, and mentorship is in multiple levels. So I will just summarize to the DCRI, for example, the key importance of the DCRI. Last year we have a very important meeting with Suresh, Lisa Berdan, and Ty. They came to Brazil and spent a week with our team down there, nailing down every single operational aspect of the Institute. And the Institute grew 1,000% after that single week that these people brought, because they brought 20 years of experience. So they were able to see what we're doing, fix or suggest, and then we will interact. Oh, this is not really possible. This is a little bit possible. Oh, okay, we need to change here. So this type of mentorship is really critical, and the Institute can grow much faster. And that's basically the only way that we can achieve everything we are achieving in such a short period of time. And that's why when we put together the Institute was with the idea to really be the extension of Duke in South America. And I'm really happy to see that people now are understanding and actually agreeing that that's the way to go. Again, clinical research should be a priority, not just a complement or something that you do after hours. Have to do it in a professional way, has to have teamwork. People there, particularly in Brazil and South America, need to learn how to share, because that's the only way that I love this actually sentence that which I learned from Paul Armstrong from the CVC group, which is the only way is working in team and share that we're going to be able to make common people achieve uncommon results, as I think we have done so far in these last 3-4 years. And that's just to finalize the clinical research part. We have Duke here, the largest ARO in the world, working with several people and several other institutes across the world and the globe. But we usually had a gap here in Brazil. Important part, 50% of South America. We didn't have anything there a few years ago. And now I'm happy that we have actually really the BCRI working together with Duke in a very close collaboration and moving the research arena in an important region of the world, which is South America. So that part was the update and the clinical research piece, and now I'm going to focus a little bit on the Global Health Initiative, trying to use the same setup. I'm glad to see here my good friend Mike Mersons, the director of the Global Health Institute. A lot of things that I'm going to do is because of his support and his belief in the potential of Brazil, of my university, of what we have done with the BCRI. So I'd like also to thank Mike for coming. So global health, something that is very hot now, but is actually a very old concept, but is changing over time in terms of how people call it. So global health is an area for study, research, and practice that places as priority on improving health and achieving equity in health for people worldwide. So again, it's something that, particularly in places where we have huge health disparities, it's very important. And Duke is doing amazingly in the Global Health Institute, and we believe we can do a lot of things in Brazil, as you know, big country with huge health disparities. So in terms of the evolution of global health and how the names have changed over time, so started with the tropical medicine, then international health, today we're calling global health, and really changing over time to a more focus in a health system approach. And all these changes have been really driven by changes in historical, economic, and political aspects of the world. Some of the social and economic determinants of health disparities: income, gender, social status, power, prestige, culture, traditions, family and community beliefs, social support networks, education, knowledge, and access to and use of health services. So we need to understand those better to be able to intervene. So global health, as the name already said, is global. It's very international. Today, over 35% of articles published in international journals are internationally collaborative, which has an increase in the last 15 years up to from 25 to 35%. And the number of internationally co-authored papers has more than doubled since 1990. So again, illustrating that those times where we had 100 patients in our hospital that have a rare disease and we could publish this in a high-profile journal, those times are gone. So today it's very difficult to even publish with something less than 1,000 patients or 2,000 patients. Not to even mention the mega trials in cardiology, which is then the situation is even harder. So based on that principle, based on that international aspect of the global health, so my university, through the Dean of Medicine, Professor Antonio Lopes and others, did a partnership with the Navy, with the Ministry of Health, with the Brazilian Federal Council of Medicine, who regulate the medicine in the country, and with the military, to try to provide health, and at the same time now, through the academic affiliation, provide and start doing research. And that's the partnership that was formed 6 months ago. And we started with a task force to low-income population in the Amazon. And the Amazon, you all understand why in the Amazon, because it's a large region of Brazil, it's a large region of the world, that a lot of the population live next to the river, in floating habitations, and it's very difficult to have access to health care. So we cannot do it unless you get there by boat. So it's the river, the Amazon River is the largest river in the world. So you have to get that through boats. And that's the only way you can actually try to bring some health care to patients down there. So the mission of this initiative is to provide medical care to low-income population who lives in the Amazon area, helping to decrease the health disparities in a large area of Brazil. The objective is to provide medical care, including preventive dental care, immunizations, and health education with a multidisciplinary team, as well as epidemiological surveillance to eliminate epidemic diseases and occasionally treat medical emergencies. So that's the main objective of this project. The main actions: epidemiological surveillance, evaluation of sanitary conditions, support to the community health agents, and integration of clinical care and research to improve patient care. The region out there was already mapped by the Navy. So the Navy already went there and mapped the huge regions and the sub-districts and what are the situation, how many people are living there, and what are the most common diseases, so that we can plan how to act. So as you can see in children, a lot of GI infections, some dermatology diseases, anemia, and some urinary tract infections. In terms of the adults, also some GI infections, dermatology disease, migraine, diabetics, some myalgias. So we already have some of this information collected, which can guide the teams that will go to the Amazon to try to focus in certain specific areas. Some of the important risk factors that were identified: lack of basic structure, lack of health education, floating habitations, poor quality of life and nutrition, and climatic factors, a lot of skin diseases due to the climatic factors. This is just to illustrate the Amazon area is very large and interact with other states of Brazil and also other countries, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia. So it's very large. You cannot just do it by one region. So based on the river geography, based on the rivers and smaller rivers geography, these areas were mapped in several districts, and the idea is that we could try to bring care to these districts. But how can you do that if you can only get there by boat? So the only way to do that is to then boat. So the Navy built 3 hospital ships. So 3 large hospital ships, very well equipped, as you can see, with operating room, 2 wards or 3 beds each, laboratory analysis, X-ray, ultrasound, echo. You can do the lab exams there, nursing room, dentist. So people could be treated in situ, in loco, while the ships are in those districts. So the first one is called Osvaldo Cruz. The second one was Carlos Chagas, from the Chagas disease. And the third one is the Montenegro ship. And as you can see, there are really very equipped ships that even small surgeries can be done there. There are ICU, you can even intubate a patient there. And if somebody happened to have an emergency while the ship is there, they can even be treated there. And if something detected that require more sophisticated kind of care, then these patients will be transferred to the main city called Manaus, which is the main city of capital of the Amazon. So this is a very interesting. Setup. The teams will be comprised by several physicians on several specialties: cardiologists, internal medicine, dermatologists, surgeons, ophthalmologists, and these teams will go on a regular basis to several of these districts, that they can go at least twice a year to every district so that they can do a reasonable follow-up in the patients. And for that, we thought it was a great idea to start doing the joint collaboration with Duke. So we tried to find a fellow that could come over there. And actually we just found it. Melissa Pena is a fellow here at Duke, is a cardiology fellow who just was awarded with a Fogarty grant. She's going to spend 6 months in Peru next year and 6 months here in those ships, together with a grad student, doing a project on hypertension. We're going to be collecting blood from all these patients. We're going to be collecting data from all these patients and try to see how are they doing. Imagine how much we can learn from these patients. What if their cholesterol is very low? Or what if their cholesterol is very high? So we can learn so much from this population because they live in a special lifestyle that is not available in any parts. So the idea that Mike and I and others have been talking is that we can really start this collaboration back and forth with faculty, with students, with grad students, with fellows, and be really also trying to be the global health piece of Duke in South America. And with that, we'll be creating, actually in June, is the official inauguration of the Brazilian Global Health Center in the Department of Medicine of the Federal University of São Paulo. So Mike and others will be coming there. We're going to be doing the inauguration, and the Amazon project will be the first project. There are some faculty actually already applying to try to come. Chris Granger and I here in the Amazon. So that's when Chris and I went to the Amazon a while ago. And of course, I'm just kidding. Chris is not coming to the Amazon to work, just to have fun. But we hope actually that faculty will be interested in coming, and fellows and others will be really trying to come and help us build this very innovative project. I'm going to just, before I finish, I have a little movie that can illustrate better what the... Can you just turn the off light a little bit? The lights? That's just a part of a movie that illustrates a little bit of what the ships are already doing, and now with the academic partnership that we build, and how this can be. And some details about the population and the Amazon.
Os navios da esperança. Amazônia, a maior floresta tropical do mundo. Localizada na região norte do Brasil, ocupa cerca de 40% do território brasileiro, num total de 3,6 milhões de quilômetros quadrados, uma área equivalente aos territórios da Suíça, Espanha, França, Bélgica, Alemanha, Itália, Portugal, Áustria, Dinamarca, Polônia, Suécia, Hungria, Grécia, Inglaterra, Noruega e República Tcheca somados. Concentrando a maior biodiversidade do planeta, abriga cerca de 25% das espécies vegetais e animais do mundo. Esta imensidão verde é cortada por inúmeros rios, incluindo o maior rio do planeta em volume de águas, o Rio Amazonas. O Rio Amazonas tem mais de 7 mil afluentes e possui 25 mil quilômetros de vias navegáveis. A bacia amazônica possui 1/5 da disponibilidade de água doce do planeta. Vivendo nesta região, existe uma população que luta para vencer as dificuldades e adaptar-se às adversidades de uma floresta tropical. Eles são aproximadamente 18 milhões de pessoas, cerca de 10% da população brasileira. 1/3 destas pessoas vivem na zona rural, praticamente isoladas do restante do país e privadas dos mais simples confortos e facilidades da vida moderna. Dentre as diversas dificuldades enfrentadas por esta população rural, uma das mais graves é a falta de um atendimento médico e odontológico adequado, que constitui um enorme desafio para o governo brasileiro. A solução deste problema é muito complexa, devido à grande extensão territorial da floresta amazônica, às dificuldades de transporte numa região de mata fechada, toda cortada por rios, onde existem poucas estradas e a maioria em péssimo estado de conservação. Outro fator complicador é a baixa densidade demográfica da região, de 3,4 habitantes por quilômetro quadrado, população esta que se encontra espalhada à beira dos rios ou em pequenos vilarejos. A Marinha do Brasil, juntamente com o Ministério da Saúde do governo brasileiro, conscientes da necessidade destes cidadãos brasileiros em contarem com uma assistência à saúde digna, firmaram um convênio para que a Marinha auxiliasse na prestação deste serviço, utilizando a mais eficiente via de transporte desta região, seus rios. Foi então desenvolvido um projeto para a criação de verdadeiros hospitais flutuantes, que pudessem navegar pelos rios, levando assistência médica e odontológica aos locais onde ela fosse necessária. A tripulação destes navios seria constituída de militares da Marinha do Brasil, que se encarregariam de sua condução e manutenção, bem como de alocar profissionais da área de saúde para prestarem um atendimento médico e odontológico. Estes navios ficariam sediados em Manaus, capital do estado do Amazonas, onde a Marinha do Brasil já possuía uma base naval. Os 2 primeiros navios de assistência hospitalar a serem criados para este fim foram os navios Oswaldo Cruz e Carlos Chagas, ambos construídos pelo Arsenal de Marinha do Rio de Janeiro, com tecnologia e mão de obra nacionais. Incorporados à Marinha do Brasil em 1984, estes navios foram criados para prestar assistência a uma variada gama de atividades na área de saúde, sendo dotados de todos os recursos médico-hospitalares necessários para operar na região, possuindo sala de cirurgia, laboratório, enfermarias, gabinetes odontológicos, consultórios médicos e uma farmácia. Posteriormente, em 1996, foi também incorporado à frota o navio de assistência hospitalar Dr. Montenegro. Com a entrada em operação dos navios de assistência hospitalar, foi iniciada uma nova fase na assistência à saúde da região amazônica. A população desta região, antes isolada e desesperançada, passou a contar com um importante apoio na área de saúde. O atendimento passou a ocorrer no próprio navio, contando com as facilidades de sua infraestrutura. Quando esta população...
Okay, so that's a little bit of the history behind the ships, and now with a formal partnership with the academia as a federal university, we can really leverage this effort, and then together with the Duke Global Health, hopefully leverage even more, and then a little bit of just the Duke Global Health Institute, training leaders, seeking solutions, partnering for change. Mike can tell much more about that, but it was founded, established in 2006. Here is the mission of the Duke Global Health Institute, which pretty much reflect what we just said about partnering, decreasing disparities, multidisciplinary approach, and try to do a better world for more people. Why has Duke made such a strong commitment to the global health? Because it's consistent with the strategic plan for Duke University, making a difference. Commitment to the interdisciplinary scholarship and engagement across the university, student enthusiasm, and support from the university leadership and faculty. Strategic goals to become the worldwide leader in interdisciplinary global health education, to catalyze and conduct innovative research that responds to the changing global burden, disease, and influences policy, and to create a robust network of international partners to exchange global health knowledge and skills. So which pretty much we think it's aligned what we want to do down there. Therefore, we believe that there is a perfect fit. Research priorities also, we believe it fits well with our priorities down there, particularly in the Amazon area. And here it's pretty impressive, all the projects and places in the world that the Global Health Institute is working on. And we are glad that now, again, in Brazil, an important part, really can make an important difference in those people's life. And so the plan to finalize my talk is really to create a global health center in Brazil. You'll be setting under the School of Medicine in the Federal University of Brazil. Our executive committee will be composed by faculty from different departments, from the university and from the School of Medicine. We just started a committee which I'm leading. I have other people helping, and I really hope just to facilitate in the beginning, and then really the committee can go on its own. There is an advisory board from Duke, including Mike Merson, Dennis Clements, John Bartlett, and Eric Pearson for this initiative. The global health will be also introduced as an elective discipline in the medical school from July on. So from July on in Brazil, people will be having talks, and it will be a formal discipline to begin with, so people can understand more about what is all global health about. Mike and I and others, we already have been doing the symposium at Duke, and Brazil symposium of global health for 3 years now, and this year the symposium will be in June, and we'll be working as a kickoff meeting for all the activities that we just described. Melissa is the fellow that I just said. She was just awarded with a Fogarty grant, so she'll be spending 6 months in Brazil, 6 months in Peru, and we hope that she'll be working with other grad students, with other residents, with other fellows from Brazil, developing projects And not only that, but helping setting up the clinical the Global Health Center in our university. We also tried to identify students that could come from Duke to do the master's program in global health, which is one of the best programs in the country today. Maybe Mike and I are talking about that. Maybe use the same setup that we are doing the CRTP, the Clinical Research Training Program, where people could get a degree without having to leave Brazil, and at the same time they could do their thesis or their project in the Amazon through this project. So all of these are ideas, and we are trying to find the right and the best students and residents and fellows to begin. And we also have, again, the spots for students that from here that would like also to go over there in a joint venture in terms of sponsorship to join this and help building this research/global health infrastructure in Brazil. And of course, we plan to evaluate everything in 2014 to see if everything is going on track and if we are able to accomplish everything we said we would. And just like we did with the Brazilian Clinical Research Institute, and in this way we could also use the Brazilian Clinical Research Institute to perform some of the research that we'll be doing in the Global Health Institute, therefore combining the energy and efforts between the Brazilian Global Health Institute and the Brazilian Clinical Research Institute, just like we are trying to do here at Duke with the Global Health and the DCRI, and hopefully we can do a better world starting with Brazil. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Renato. That's very impressive. Before I make any comments or have questions of my own, I'd like to open it up because we've only got a few minutes left, and I want to make sure everyone who's attended has the opportunity to ask you questions. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I got to go, unfortunately, but I just want to say to all of you that this is a wonderful example of two institutes working together overseas. I can't think of a better one. And I have to say, Renato, in a very short period of time, has really learned, and based on the experience in setting up the Clinical Research Institute and then just taking that model and using it to work with us, it's, again, really marvelous, and we're very excited about this opportunity and hope all of you will come on the ship with us.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Mike. Other comments or questions? I have one comment and one question. First of all, my comment is I'm much less skeptical of you getting this off the ground than I was, say, 3 years or 4 years ago when we first started talking about the BCRI, and much, much less skeptical than 7 years ago when you first came here as a fellow. So I just want to say that you're like Barack Obama in a way, in that the highway is littered with people who have underestimated the president, and the highway will be littered with people who underestimate you. My question for you is, you gave a lot of opportunities. Can you list 2 or 3 of the biggest challenges? What keeps you up at night to get this thing off the ground?
Sure, Danny. And for the global health, you mean, or for the other one? For the global health? So, again, I think for the global health, I would agree with you. For the global health, is a little bit easier than it was for the clinical research. Because global health primarily is patient care, and is a lot of decreasing disparity, and that's something that a lot of Brazilians do, and they do very well. In the clinical research arena, especially bringing new concepts such as an academic research organization, how can you operationalize research, was a little bit more challenged because people thought they knew what clinical research was. And then there is more ego involved, there is more prestige involved, there is publications involved, so it was much more difficult to help with the idea of learning how to share. So I think that with the global health is a little bit easier for this reason primarily, but nonetheless there are barriers, and I would say that again when you have Navy, Ministry of Health, universities involved, it comes to people again, and I think, as Rob Califf would say, everything will be easier if it was not for the people. So that's a challenge, how you navigate through the politics and making sure everybody's on the same goal. So I think that's always a challenge. And second is really bringing something novel that is not novel per se, but the concept in terms of the way we're doing it's kind of novel in the country. And then you always have those people that are more skeptical and say, oh, is it going to really work? What am I going to get from it? And then you have to really just come back to, again, to the share thing, that if you give to the team, you get much more, and as a common person, you'll be achieving uncommon results.
We have an enthusiastic, overexcited crowd here. Don't raise, yes, ma'am. I don't want everyone raising their hands all at once. Go ahead, Chiara.
Thank you, Renato. That's outstanding. And when he came, he had the cube across mine, and he said, "Oh gosh, this Brazilian guy, how am I gonna survive?" But he made it. He did good. I'm impressed. Really impressed. Congratulations. My question is, you're going in the Amazon. I'm thinking these people, they may have not seen a doctor. In how you're going to approach, said, come on the ship. I'm going to take your blood pressure, your blood. So I don't know. I see that would scare me. They may have done already. You have this military that have organized already the boat and things. But what is this? I think is the biggest barrier to you to get these people really involved and trust you.
That's an interesting point, Chiara. And it's so surprising that actually when you go there, you feel just the opposite. They are so hopeless, and in terms of they didn't have any hope in life, that any kind of help they attach like their life. Is the chance that they somehow know that those people can help them and can help their kids that are sometimes crying, sometimes with some disease that they can see in their skin but they don't know what to do, or with diarrhea or dying. So somehow they see these Navy ships as the way that can be helping them and saving them. And they are very, very friendly to the people there. But nonetheless, you're right. How can we handle approaching these people and starting doing research from there? And that's why we have the Council Federal of Medicine of Brazil helping us figure that out. How can you actually do research from these subjects in a way that is fair for them? So we're not just going to go there and say, look, give me your blood. We're going to really do it through the country in a more really formal and ethical way. But it's challenged because as you're absolutely right, they never saw a doctor in their entire life. But then they see the ships coming and the kids are getting better. Some people have kids, have diseases or have situations that they say, how would it be possible to get that cured other than these ships? So interestingly, the feeling of them to us is much more friendly and open than one could expect.
Great, thank you. It's after 1 o'clock. Renato, thank you for coming. Renato, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, guys.